Yes, so we're going to talk some cricket now in the SportsMax zone. The West Indies women went down to South Africa by 166 runs via the Duckworth-Lewis-Stern method in the third, deciding women's one-day international at the 3Ws Oval earlier at Cave Hill in Barbados, surrendering the three-match series 2-1. Tasman Brits hit a fourth ODI ton, 101, while opening partner and captain Laura Wolfhard scored 75 to give the visitors another strong start. The pair added to back-to-back half-century stands from the previous games with a historic 184-run partnership for the first wicket, the Proteas' highest for any wicket against the Caribbean side in the format. Now, a quick triple strike from Afi Fletcher, 3 for 53, and the constant rain breaks were not enough to slow the South African scoring before one of many such intervals brought about an abrupt end to their innings. 278 for 6 in 45.5 overs. Now set a revised 288 runs in 39 overs for victory. And without the services of the injured Stefanie Taylor, the West Indies were left reeling at 10 for 4 in the third over, courtesy of Masabata Klaas, who led the South African bowlers with figures of 4 for 25. There was no such highlight performance from the Windies' top order, however, with a miserable scorecard reading a solitary double-digit score from the top six. And despite a fighting 32-ball 43 from all-rounder Jazara Claxton, the Caribbean side could only manage 121 in 27.5 overs with 9 batters available. International cricket commentator Nikhil Uttamchandani joins us via Zoom to look back at this West Indies performance. Nikhil, pretty disappointing here. The West Indies won the first game, but then lost the other two pretty badly.
Yeah, Lance, I think West Indies and South Africa are two very different places. South Africa are a team that probably would have themselves in the top 3 or 4 teams in the world. And look, the fact that they got to a T20 World Cup final months ago, I think it speaks volumes as to the way that they've developed their players and also the way that they have played their cricket in the past 24 months. Look, I think they deserve a lot of credit, although the West Indies weren't anywhere close to their best today. South Africa deserve immense credit for the way they've come back in this series, and especially the way a few individual players have improved over the last 2 years.
Yeah, a couple of things to happen today. One, Hayley Matthews looked pretty annoyed with a couple of the umpiring decisions. And Stefanie Taylor bogged down by injuries again.
Yeah, well, I think on Hayley Matthews, look, at the end of the day, I think when it's not going your way and then you have a few decisions that also go against you, naturally you tend to see frustration and annoyance on the field. But at the end of the day, you know, the umpire's decision is final. There's no DRS, of course, in this series. So that in itself is another issue, but you've got to just live with it. In terms of Stefanie Taylor, yeah, very disappointing to see another injury for Taylor. And I think actually it's worth maybe taking the T20 series off and maybe the West Indies just using the time that they've got coming up to get Stefanie Taylor and Chanel Henry back to their best. Because you saw, I think we've all seen in the last 6 ODIs, the England series and the South Africa series, just how much the West Indies new ball bowling is suffering without Chanel Henry and her wicket taking. I mean, 11 matches since the start of the World Cup qualifiers, they've taken 4 wickets in the power play at 148 runs per wicket. So, yeah, it's really been miserable for the new ball bowling of the West Indies.
Yeah, very much the case, Nikhil, and that's exactly where I wanted to go, because for such a long time we've lamented on this show the lack of quality in the batting department, but even the bowling department, the team looks lacking at this stage. And I know that you'll probably say, hey, they came back pretty well against South Africa today. They did the same in the first one-day international, which they went on to win. But the more and more I see this team, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. But for the first time today, Nikhil, I must admit, for the first time today, I love my cricket and I love watching cricket, both the men and the women. But when I watched that bowling performance today, for the first time in probably ever, I thought to myself, I don't want to see much more of this. And a lot of it was just down to how poor we were as a bowling unit, but also as a fielding unit for those 25 overs. So I know you speak about the new ball bowlers, but it's not just the new ball bowlers. We seem to consistently have wicket-taking options in that bowling lineup, certainly against quality batters, and that for me is a serious problem.
Yeah, it is, Ricardo. But again, we have to understand that Claxton has just played at a 19 World Cup. Janelia Glasgow has not even played 20 international games as yet. There's inexperience there. And I think this team was built around Chanel Henry and Deandra Dottin bowling the first 20 overs or the majority of the first 20, and you're going without both of them. So now you're asking players to step into positions where they're not used to bowling. Now, having said that, I think you can't just expect that Chanel Henry and Deandra Dottin are going to play forever. So it's on the West Indies now to develop a few other options. And you look at just 3 different bowlers taking a wicket in the power play since the qualifiers. That's a big concern. But I do think there can be maybe a bit of room to be a bit more flexible with their tactics. You look at the fact that Aliyah Aline has not bowled one single power play over, since the World Cup qualifiers. Why? Because I know she's been expensive a few years ago bowling the new ball, but does that mean she should never be given the chance? How will she ever develop into an option? And she showed us in Pakistan, she's capable of controlling her length. And look, you look at someone like Afi Fletcher, 23 wickets in 13 games this year. She's been by far the West Indies' best bowler. But could she potentially be given 1 or 2 overs a bit earlier, maybe in the power play as the wicket-taking option? Look, it's just about, I think, finding a few different options and solutions, because you can't keep playing the same game each and every time and expect that just one day it's magically going to change. So I understand your frustration, but I do think there needs to be some patience given to such a young bowling group.
Yeah, and I hear you, Nikhil, but it's more than just that for me. So you spoke about, doing different things. You spoke about Aliyah Aline, you spoke about Afi Fletcher and how you could utilize them a little bit differently. I remember when West Indies got to the 50-over World Cup semi-final under Courtney Walsh as coach. And yes, you're going to tell me, well, Deandra Dottin was in that team. Stefani Taylor was fit. You had Hayley Matthews scoring well. And yes, that might be the case. But something that stood out to me with that bowling unit is that for pretty much that entire World Cup, Courtney Walsh, as the coach, decided that we're going to bowl one side of the stump. We're going to bowl outside the off stump. We're going to pack the offside field. And as much as possible, we are going to try and stifle teams. When I watch this West Indies women's team in the field, I am struggling to see a plan. And that is part of the problem. It's as if they go out there and the thinking is, let's try and finish 50 overs, whether we concede 350 or 280. But the plan just seems to be get through 50 overs, as opposed to coming up with ways that they're going to try and dismiss batters or limit batters. I'm just not seeing any of that. And that is even a bigger concern, because it makes me wonder about the leadership in the unit, both from a coaching perspective and a captaincy standpoint as well. And that is why I am most frustrated. It's not the losing necessarily, but it's the lack of a clear plan as to how the team wants to operate in the field.
I think, Ricardo, look, every team has got an analyst. They would have sat down, they would plan. But at the end of the day, you can plan. I can sit here and we can plan. I'm going to do this tomorrow, this the next day, this the other day. But at the end of the day, you have to have people that are able to execute the plan. And I think when you've got people like Tasmin Braitz or Wolvart coming at you and putting you under pressure, all of a sudden then it's quite easy to go away from the plan. And that's why you see the best players in the world. The best players in the world are the ones that are able to, after being under pressure, go back to their plan. And it's hard, I think, to expect 20, 21, 22-year-olds to be able to have that skill with such little experience. Now, do I think that the West Indies should be a lot better than they are because it's things that they can control, like fielding, for example? Yes, but I do think we have to take it with a pinch of salt, because we're expecting this team to, compete with the best teams in the world. But if we look at the difference in the experience between the West Indies and South Africa, or the West Indies and England, I think it's chalk and cheese.
I hear you, Nikhil. Thank you so much for bringing reason. Don't agree with all of it, and I'm still frustrated, but I hear you loud and clear. Show me the plan and then say, okay, it didn't work, but at this stage, I'm not seeing any plan, and that's my issue. But We'll chat again
an
soon, my
example
friend.
of the plan is the way they bowled, the way Claxton bowled her last spell. I think that was a good example. Taking pace off the ball. It's just a new ball. When there are only 2 fielders outside the circle, that's where the problems come. I think when it's coming to the back end of the innings, I think they're showing us that they can maybe execute a bit more with more protection.
All right. Have a good rest of the day, Nikhil. And I'll try to get over today's performance. Take care.
Okay, so all the best.
Thank you. Shall we go to a break? We need